Hello again. As you've noticed, this is a bonus episode. You can hear Quinn talk about Fallout in the previous podcast. He gave me a lot of information about vaults, so I figured this is a great opportunity for a bonus episode. And as you know, the topics covered here are not always Canadian, but I am. I'm Rosie. It's time for some extras. Let's do some history, eh? And I know you wanted to talk about some of these social, physical, psychological experiments. So,
Vault-Tec on the outside towards civilians was just they were focused on you. They want to protect you. Therefore, you was just this giant organization that was built to protect people. That's what we thought. Certain vaults were basically called control vaults, where you would have that stable population. You'd insert 100 people, and you would just have them prosper. You'd have them make their own little civilization, and eventually it would be fine to leave. One of my favorites is 100 people were put into a vault. After the first week, they were chosen they had to take an overseer. So an overseer is basically like the president or the prime minister of a vault. They made sure everybody had a job or they were doing something productive. So
it's a small community in that vault.
Yeah, so it was almost like a little village and you had your village leader with the overseer. He would oversee everybody. Make sure everybody was doing their thing, nobody was getting into trouble. Certain vaults had security. In this vault in particular, an automated message would play, I believe it was once a year, and it would say, sacrifice one of your dwellers, and that's it. So they sacrificed the overseer. So the overseer became a position where you die. You're the one that gets sacrificed.
Oh, I see. So you're basically becoming a martyr.
Yeah.
So you're taking care of everybody for a year, but then that's it.
In this case, or he or she, they would petition all year. It was almost like an election. Where elect John, but you wouldn't be petitioning for yourself. You'd be petitioning to get somebody else elected.
So is this in the 76 version, where it's all community, actual people playing the game? So
this one, I believe we discovered it in Fallout 3. It was a separate vault that this didn't happen. You were given recordings where you would hear the vault saying, please, you must sacrifice one of your things. It's a giant social experiment, so every year, and all this data is kept on these recordings. They got to the 4 left, and they made a pact where they wouldn't let the machine decide what they wanted to do. So 2 of them committed suicide, and the other 2 were like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then the vault congratulated them on their humanity, and they let them stay. And that was it.
Crazy.
If they originally just said no, they could have lived in the vault forever.
Yeah.
They had the water, they had the food, they had the resources.
Incredible.
But they gave in to the fear of what's going to happen next. If I don't do this.
Are we all going to die?
They sacrificed hundreds of people.
Were there any other psychological things?
Yeah, so for just for that one in particular, you go through and you grab certain recordings. You're building this up. You're building up this story and you're collecting it for yourself. You can slowly see what's going on. And so for other vaults, this one's more of a joke. So it's Vault 69, where it was 999 women and 1 male. Vault 68 was the opposite, 999 men and 1 female.
Oh boy.
And so the female became a queen, basically turned into a beehive. They tried to reproduce. And then there's ones where they only put rehabilitated drug addicts and put them into the vault. And they would, through the vents, they would let out drugs. Basically, everybody was high all the time.
What you heard on the recordings that you would pick up along your way.
Yeah, so if you
hear about other vaults,
yeah, so you can walk up into a new vault, and because you have a Pip-Boy, you can unlock it and go inside. So, and you would go into these computers, and you could read all of these logs, and you can, October 17th, 2022. It'll tell you all this stuff about who recorded it, what's going on, and you can piece the story together as to how any of this happened. So one of the good ones is they basically had a super complex with all these artists. They gave each artist a specific room where they could do whatever they want, and they almost... It turned out badly where it turned into almost like a murder mystery, which is the way they spun it. I think that was in Fallout 4. And
but could you visit these rooms, or were they just in the logs?
You could visit these people. The whole concept was they were all their brains were removed and put into machines called Robo-Brain.
Okay.
So imagine...
That sounds terrible.
You basically imagine R2-D2 with arms and tractors.
Okay.
And so you put the brains in and you can control that. So they could continue their art. They could do all this art stuff. They can express themselves, but they're no longer human. They can't eat. They can't really enjoy. So some of them go insane. Some of them commit murder, and Yeah, I'll leave it at that, and you can decide whatever if you decide to play yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
I think we know of 120, but there's Vault 101, there's Vault 400 and something, I think. And
so there's quite a few vaults.
There's a lot
that they can develop upon.
So then they can still nitpick vaults that they want, and they can, so Vault 76, this is this now, boom, and then they can unload an entire story on you.
So there's a big room for expansion.
Absolutely. So I think one of the vaults that I wanted to bring up, it was a social experiment with children. So they took adults and children, and then they killed off all the adults, and the children had to run the vault. They eventually decided that if you were an adult, you leave. You get kicked out of the vault. So they would get children coming from the outside. They'd come in until they're adults, and then they'd get kicked out again.
When they're like 16 or 18
16,
or whatever.
yeah. 16, you're gone. And
so only children can run that vault.
Yeah. And there's so many of these intricate stories that you walk in, and I haven't even gone to the physical experiment part. Those ones are really creepy. And you slowly piece together from these logs what happened here. And you can see the destruction of the aftermath, but you don't know what happened. So for the physical experiment, these ones were...
Terrible?
Oh, yeah. Basically, a doctor invented a gene, which basically turned everybody into a muscular Shrek. Okay. They're called super mutants. Most of them were just these mindless brutes. Pick up concrete and put it on a rebar and just hit you with it, and that became a weapon. They're like these.
That would be a very violent vault.
Yeah. So I believe the concept in Fallout, the first Fallout, actually no, that's a spoiler, but they were developed by this gene, and they're meant to just be better than humans.
Yeah.
But
we shouldn't play with the genes too much, right?
Yeah. They found that out the hard way.
Yeah.
So there's this vault that would just farm people. They would inject them with a certain amount of chemicals, a certain amount of this gene. One of the monsters that was created was a centaur. The centaur isn't like what you would think. Basically, like a giant blob of what you would believe a person to be that has 3 tentacles coming out of its mouth. Yeah, it's very disgusting. But they're extremely terrifying. Do you have to
fight some of these? Or of course.
But it's the best part of the game is fighting all these mutants and monsters. And
you're like, I'm human, but yet I can win.
Yeah, and that was one of the physical experiments that kind of got me. That was just like, this could probably happen. And so the physical experiments really brought out like oh my god. And then somebody tried to perfect this gene where you had these super mutants that also had a high intelligence.
Oh, that's scary.
Yeah, so you saw this in Fallout New Vegas where they were conscious of their mutation, but they didn't want to be violent. Where they were suppressing it. Yeah, they had this strength that they controlled. They lived up in the mountains, and they would try to rehabilitate some of these super mutants because they were people. There's so many. One of them was a botanical vault, for example. So basically, they focused on trying to genetically manipulate any plant, so tomatoes, whatever. But one of their manipulations eventually took hold of the vault, and it corrupted people. It was almost like a spore, and it almost turned them into mindless zombies. And it completely destroyed the vault. So when you go in, you're in this like barren wasteland where it's just dirt and sand. And then you see just this green oasis everywhere. And you're like, what's going on? So you walk up to the vault and you fight all these little plant things in the front that are trying to kill you. And you're like, what's going on? There's like giant praying mantises. And they're like the size of my chest. It's like, okay, all right, let me deal with that. And then you go in and you see all these like bodies and you see these monsters. And one of them is, it completely took hold of one of the scientists and turns it into like this weird vegetation zombie, and it was completely green, and it would like try to eat you and absorb. It was terrifying, actually. I mean, I was 12 when I first saw it, so it was nightmare fuel, basically. Yeah. Again, you can go to these terminals and you see all the story that happened, and you can see how it all happened. And there's one where this one's pretty funny. So they put in one person, and they had him cloned 100 sometimes. But
so you're dealing with yourself?
So you only had, I think his name was Dave. So you get into the vault, you have no idea what's going on. All you hear is Dave, Dave, Dave. So they can't actually say anything except for Dave. The cloning process was imperfect. Oh, so you have to fight all these Daves. They're all aggressive to you.
And you're like, stop.
You're like, what's happening?
Dave?
Who's Dave? Like,
oh, no.
Which one are you?
I feel bad for anybody who has the name Dave.
You're like, what? No, stop.
No, that's my name. I'm a good person. Yeah.
And you see all the records of how it was controlled and how it was happened and how everything went down. And that one was pretty funny. The puppet one was creepy. I wasn't afraid of that. I was not messing with that one.
No.
The one guy in the
and a million
bunch of puppets.
Yeah. That sounds like sort of anything with clowns, right? For many people.
Yeah. There's quite a bit of vaults.
So as part of the story, Vault-Tec did all these different kinds of experiments, and because you have so many vaults in this game, as you've mentioned, sort of pick up wherever you want and add to these stories. I wonder how many writers were in that room. I mean, coming up with all these crazy concepts. It always blows my mind for these games.
I would imagine they probably consulted some like psychologists to try and like really...
What is your scariest thing? Or what is...
Like, what happens when you throw ethics out the window? What would you do?
And then you talk to a botanist maybe and say, what would be the worst case scenario, right?
How could we mess this up so badly?
How can plants take over the world? What would work? And I mean, it's within the game, so I mean, there's some like fantasy and magic and
you can throw in, like, the transistor was ever invented, so you can snowball off of that.
Of course.
We can do this to a plant. They basically just made plants bigger, so tomatoes were like the size of your chest or your head.
Yeah.
Whatever.
That would hurt if it hits you, though. Even if they're soft and squishy on the inside. It'd be
like getting a giant water balloon thrown at you.
That would be horrible. So some of these vaults you would go in and you would fight, let's say the botanical monsters and such. And at the end, if you sort of claim this vault, are you able to build your world upon it? Or do you have items that you get from it?
You'll get some reward. So in Fallout 3, you usually there's something at the end that's like, wow. Fallout 4, you were given your own vault. You stumble upon this vault, there is somebody trapped in there. I think it's part of the DLC. So the original Overseer they were supposed to build it, they were supposed to make it their own, and their workers died and turned into ghouls because of the radiation. So you get a radio hit on your Pip-Boy, and it's like, anybody wanting to need help, blah, 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 and you go in, you clear out this rubble, you take it's like a build workshop, how you do it in every other settlement, and you destroy and you remove it with, it's just kind of a pop-up thing, but you destroy it with whatever. And then you get to this giant room that was supposed to be a vault, and you just see this sentient ghoul, a sentient zombie. The ghouls are basically just over-radiated people where their brains are turned to mush.
Okay.
But certain people have pushed past that and were able to keep their sanity, but their skin, and then she's like, wow, like, I've been here for 200 years, been stuck.
I've been waiting.
I'm a ghoul, I don't need to eat. I've just been kind of chilling and trying to get power, I got nothing. Yeah. And you come in there, and you're the wanderer. You figure out all this stuff. You're able to build your own vault. You can send people there. Most people that you send there, you can find your own... they have a certain dialogue you can have, but they're not too personal. There's a few things I'm not going to spoil just in case anybody goes...
Sure, let's not spoil as much as possible.
Yeah, there's a couple things that you can find that really, really blow your mind. And like little callbacks to other games.
Sure.
The little Easter eggs are pretty cool. Yeah, I'm not going to spoil much.
No. Okay, let's stop there before you're tempted.
Yeah, we're done.
Well, that was quite funny. Don't forget to find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter @HistoryA. And you can always rate this podcast on your favorite podcasting platform. And I would like to thank my husband, Jamie, our large family, our friends. Without them, I wouldn't be adventuring through history. Un grand merci.